welcome back to another video. So I'm not too sure if you can tell by the intro of today's video, this was supposed to be an ASMR session, but I'll explain that a little bit later. So I wanted to do a little bit of I don't know if you can consider this like a redemption drawing, because I'm not going to do like a one-to-one for this one, so it's not quite a redraw either. But I have this old sketch page of Sunday, which you saw a little bit earlier, and I thought it'd be fun to just redraw Sunday in another sketch page kind of format. I wasn't really ready to do like any kind of full illustration of him, and I think at this point I haven't done any sort of like Sunday full illustration, but I just been really enjoying doing sketch pages, and we're gonna follow kind of like a similar format to the one that I did previously. So I'll have one larger Sunday on the left hand side of my canvas, and then we'll do kind of like a medium-ish sized one in the bottom right hand corner, and the remaining space I'll just kind of squeeze in one last little doodle or drawing. So let me talk a little bit about why this isn't an ASMR video, despite you hearing some of like the pencil noises in the background. I like to try my best to film in a very quiet area, or like in silence basically, and listen to podcasts or streams in the background and just draw. And I always usually check the levels whenever I have anything to do with ASMR, just to make sure it's not picking up any unnecessary sounds while I'm recording. And I was like almost 100% sure that it was not picking up anything that was like background noise, because I do have some filters and stuff to try to prevent too many humming noises or anything like that, to make the sound kind of more silent. But as I increase the volume, which I like to do for some of my ASMR videos, just to make sure that the volume isn't too quiet overall, this one had a very strange, almost like humming, but almost gurgly-ish noise. I'm pretty sure there's maybe an ASMR or two that has the same noise that I did not pick up on initially. But now that I kind of know what causes it, I try my best to prevent it. And one thing is like checking the levels before I start recording to make sure that it's not picking up all like any of the weird noises, which I don't know what exactly causes that specific noise or triggering my noise gate or whatever is on my mic. But I was not able to see it, so I thought everything was normal and it was going to perform as such. But as I raise the volume, there is that kind of weird low humming gurgly noise, which I really dislike. So in this case, I decided that I would not increase the volume, but it felt too quiet still to be an ASMR session, so I'm just gonna do voiceover for the rest. So I do apologize about that, and I'll definitely make another ASMR session in the future, and hopefully sometime soon, of something else. So kind of back to the drawing, like I mentioned earlier, we are doing a sketch page, and for me, this basically just kind of compiles a bunch of different drawings together on one canvas, and depending on my mood, it will kind of change whether or not I spend a lot of time rendering or cleaning up things. Sometimes I leave things a lot more sketchier and like just cleaning up very basic lines, kind of getting rid of some of the sketchier stuff that might be like floating around the sketch or like within the color, or I will go almost full render, which I know if I do kind of that process, it's not really considered a sketch, but just like the overall format of like laying down the character in almost like in a collage-ish kind of way is kind of what I describe what my sketch pages are. So hopefully there's a little bit less confusion. And then talking a little bit about Sunday. If you're not familiar, he's the character from Honkai Star Rail, and he is definitely one of my favorite characters just in general. I do like Robin more than I like Sunday, but I definitely drawn Sunday more than I've drawn Robin. But no matter how many times I've drawn Sunday at this point, I feel like I've never really done him justice. And today is going to be a little bit debatable as well. I do end up liking, to a certain extent, the one that I'm currently working on. And I tried my best to leave in as much of like the sketching process, some of the coloring and the rendering for all three of the drawings. So how I typically do these sketch pages, I will just sketch to fill up the entire canvas, oftentimes starting from one corner and then moving to fill up the rest of the space, almost in like a fan motion. So if I start in the bottom left, I might then either go to the center or the bottom right and then move upwards to fill up the remaining spaces, and then try to make sure that things look kind of more filled or a little bit busier in a sense. I do like adding doodles or little text or something floating around on my sketch page as well, just to leave it a little bit more casual rather than having just finished pieces on one canvas altogether. Oh, also, so while I was working on the Sunday sketches, I also ended up drawing his halo using the symmetry tool for some of the details. And then I'm going to keep kind of like a spare copy of this so I can use it for any of the other drawings that I ended up doing where he's more or less front facing and I kind of can use the same halo. Because otherwise, some details, especially from characters that have very elaborate designs. I'm looking at like VTubers, I'm looking at gotcha characters especially as well. Some details it pains me to draw certain things, and especially if I'm doing a sketch page of one character, but I'm drawing their outfit or them multiple times, I am gonna try my best to speed up the process here and there if I can, unless I don't really care for accuracy, which sometimes is the case. And the reason being that I like doing sketch pages a little bit more recently compared to doing any full illustration or just like straight up just normal sketching. I sometimes just am in the mood to do very light rendering, or I like to play around with color, so just doing normal black and white sketching digitally isn't enough sometimes, so I will add the color, and then sometimes it's a little bit too messy, so I want to render it a little bit because I like polishing up the face or adding details to the hair, making certain details stand out, which you'll see a little bit later that I try my best to always treat the rendering phase and the cleaning up phase as a way to like fully polish something to a certain degree, where I try to add more contrast. I'm trying to draw your eyes more or less towards the character's face because that's like one of my favorite things to draw in color and just work on usually. But for the first sketch, I think I had half the mind of debating whether or not I was going to do almost like a one-to-one redraw of the sketch page, but I feel like it kind of defeats the purpose of what I get out of enjoying sketch pages. I think it's a little bit easier for me to do redraws of finished pieces because there's kind of like a set goal in mind. While these sketch pages, typically I end up just drawing whatever's on my mind and just playing around with things. And like I said, the main goal for me is just to fill up the entire canvas to some degree. So starting off with the Sunday on the very left and then moving to the bottom right, kind of doing a much smaller Sunday sketch. And I am referencing a little bit of my old one. I wanted to do something with like a crying version of Sunday still. This sketch is going to change quite a bit. I don't know if it's for better or for worse. So that's like another thing I end up doing at some point, is the fact that when I do end up merging my layers to prep for doing rendering and cleaning up, then I can kind of like take chunks of a drawing out completely and then either make a new layer or just paint on top of it directly to kind of change things up. So that's what I ended up doing for the second Sunday. And then this last sketch, I kind of went back to my original idea and potentially redrawing it. I don't keep the same mood, and I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't because I think I like the old version of the one that I'm currently drawing because of just the general vibe of it. This one becomes very much more like stiff and too much like of a standalone drawing where it doesn't really make sense, and the lighting could have been different, or just expression also I think I could have played around a little bit with. But with that being said, I do treat the sketch pages as a way for me, kind of like if I like a series, I'll be able to draw multiple characters without committing to like just a standalone drawing on like a single canvas, or going full blown into individual full illustrations for each character. Otherwise, you've seen me do other sketch pages where I kind of just focus on one character, and it's very similar to the ones that I've done of like references for my OCs. So those ones are just kind of fun to do because I do give myself like a slight set criteria for those ones. So I need like a headshot that has like a very close up of their face, and then I have to have like a chibi version. I need like a waist up, I need a full body, and just try to cram everything into, at least in this case, 2 canvases. But I always love the type of pages where some artists seem like they fill up literally every inch of the canvas, which I think is kind of cool. And if you do work in the same method where you're kind of drawing behind each subsequent drawing almost, so you're not really, well, I mean, you could let them overlap, but it's kind of fun having certain spots where you might not think of a proper pose to put in that space. So you might have to think a little bit out of the box to make sure that you can kind of fill up the space without making it look too strange and without like impeding too much with the surrounding sketches, hopefully. But things like sketch pages, sketchbooks, just general drawing for fun, or you want to relax or like rest your brain, just draw and do whatever fits what you want. So, like I said, sometimes I do go a little bit ham with the rendering for this quote unquote sketch page, even though it's not technically a sketch. But if it allows my brain to kind of like turn off and just like have fun drawing, then I will definitely do that for the entirety of the page. And at like any point, I'm not like super committed to finishing the drawing. So I think later on when I start working on rendering, I kind of go in order from the biggest to the smallest one. So number 1, 2, and 3 in that order. I put in a little bit less effort every time, and probably it's because of I know which drawing I want to have priority on, and typically it is the largest one and almost like the first one that I draw, because that's the one I'm more or less like fixated on before we start moving on to any of the other sketches or drawings. But then we're working on coloring. So right off the bat, after I finish sketching, I will put in some sort of background color, and oftentimes for my sketch pages, I like to either put like a border around the characters, or even just like a very rectangular frame kind of in the back of everything. Or my favorite is to do a grid. So luckily in Procreate, there's a really nice grid brush that you can kind of size up to whatever size. But I like using this for sketch pages because it kind of reminds me of like graph paper. For at least like myself, I kind of tie that a little bit more towards like as if you're doodling and sketching on just normal graph paper during school or like for fun, whatever. I remember like a lot of the time I would bring printer paper with me to make sure that I had something to draw on that wasn't like notebook paper or lined paper, assignments, all that stuff, because I'm a little bit secretive with my drawings when I was younger. So if I could hide them in a folder that wasn't like presented in my work, then I would do that more often. But I think it just kind of helps give it a little bit more of like a casual look also to the entire spread, because there's not really going to be a focus on lighting or too much patterning going on, hopefully. And at least for myself, a little bit later, I will lighten the background to be more of a lighter color. This kind of like bluish purple is a little bit too intense, but I was trying to make it match my previous sketch page that I did a Sunday, but we're gonna quickly kind of abandon that because I wanted something a little bit more airier and lighter for the background, because it was just not working in my opinion with this particular color. I don't know if anyone else finds it a little bit mind-boggling or baffling, the fact that it's already November. I don't know. I think I have too many things that I wanted to do this year that I was not able to tackle for various reasons. So I'm gonna try my best to kind of steamroll? No. I want to get a good head start back into certain projects that I wanted to do since the beginning of this year that I really did not tackle, and I thought that I was going to get done in the middle of the summer. But summer had a bunch of different plans and stuff going on, which I forgot that was going to be much more busier. So I'm going to probably briefly talk about them here while we are finishing up some of the coloring portion for this. But I guess before I jump into that, when I'm doing the coloring, I oftentimes will color kind of back and forth between all the drawings, but I noticed that sometimes it's annoying from hopping from one drawing to another and then to another and then back to the first one. So oftentimes I will just start off with like the base skin tone, so I don't have kind of like more accuracy with that, and same with like eye color. But then once we get to like hair and outfit, I can just like directly color pick from the first one that I did and hopefully match the colors more appropriately so that we don't have as much back and forth, and I can just color as I wish but still kind of keeping the colors relatively the same among all of the other sketches together. We're fast approaching kind of like the rendering stage. I will end up doing some sort of lighting, but let me talk quickly about some of the projects that I wanted to do this year that I did not get to do like at all. So one obviously is the flower zine. So the flower OC zine that I wanted to do since last year, that I started doing like the planning. I got several illustrations done, at least of my OCs, like at least one for my main cast of OCs. I'm actually currently working on Selwyn's right now. His is going to be a little bit more on the simple side, but I'm just kind of like trying my best to bring myself back into that project. But I think I did get a little bit demoralized about it after the tariff news hit, because I am from Canada, but I know majority of people who were interested in the zine, as well as just like in general for mailing, it's mostly US based. So it kind of does take a bit of a hit on me, unfortunately. Not like a super big one because I don't do a lot of like online sales as much anymore. So I know it affects a lot of other people more so. I think the other 3-ish projects that I want to kind of work on, I'm already starting one. So one is to remake, or I guess like make a new VTuber model for myself, but I want to do it all entirely in Procreate for the most part, at least for like the illustrating portion. And then I'll probably compile it in Clip Studio Paint, then take it into Live 2D to do the rigging. I'm kind of excited. I want to relearn Live 2D again because it's been a hot minute since the last time I've used it. And speaking of Live 2D, another project that kind of requires me to use Live 2D as well is either to, I don't know where exactly I'm going to use it, but I want to have almost like a loading screen-ish type of thing, but it's like all of my OCs cycling in, kind of like in an arch, coming from like the bottom right, going to the left side, but in an arch kind of way, and they kind of just like fly in, do a pose, or kind of float in, and have like a mini introduction or something like that. I've had this idea for a long time, and I know I'm capable of doing it, especially without like having to relearn anything too difficult in Live 2D, since it's just simple rigging and then compiling it all together in kind of like the animation portion of Live 2D. So I will definitely kind of like plan that out and probably have it. Maybe I won't promise that it will be out by the end of this year, but I want to do it within the next few months at least for sure. And kind of like on a smaller scale, which I already also started working on, is a clay figurine. So I've made clay chibis in the past. I have one of my OC Maseki, I have one of Zhongli from Genshin Impact, and I also have Fremine from Genshin Impact. But I want to make one of Flynn's, who's still a Genshin character, but also maybe, oh, actually there is one more project I totally forgot. So other than making Flynn's into like a little chibi figurine, which I'm gonna try to figure out, I have kind of like his base done, but I want to kind of like figure out his hair situation in the face and the eyes, and whether or not I want to do those separately, kind of not attached to the rest of the body, and then bake it, do the hair, bake it again, and kind of like bake it all together one last time for everything, just to make sure he's kind of like sturdy enough. And the last thing, which I am really excited to do, but I'm kind of scared to do it because if I mess up, it's going to be, I don't know, it's like a labor of love. And in a way, I've talked about this in the past and I've made a video about it, but making a plush of my OC. So I've made both Maseki and Kaisen in the past as like little 10cm dolls, and I really want to make one of Selwyn, but I am conflicted a little bit about how I want to do his hair, as well as embroidering his face and his eyes. So I might do like a 10cm doll of Selwyn, and then like a very tiny little like mochi, just his head kind of version, maybe as a keychain. I'm gonna play around with the idea. His hair is kind of like intimidating, and I want to add a little bit more detail to his eyes, but I don't really want to go any bigger than 10cm because the 10cm is kind of like the perfect size if I ever want to like take him with me on a trip or something, or for him to just sit on my desk. I think I have like a 20cm doll of Maseki somewhere, which is like very botched and kind of like derpy looking, but he's kind of like at a different desk at this point, and he's just a little bit too big for me to keep him around more visibly around my space. So some things are like OC based, which I think majority of them are, but some stuff I think you guys would like, since figure making with clay I think is just kind of like a fun medium to play around with. And then obviously doing the sewing one I think is kind of very interesting to do, and I'm excited to show you guys the process once again and hopefully film a lot more of it, since I only filmed like very small snippets of it of Kaisen's like little plush version. So hopefully I'll record a little bit more and show kind of not exactly a step-by-step because I don't really want it to be a tutorial. I'll make sure to like link all my resources and stuff just so it's a little bit easier for you guys to follow along if you're interested. But that's kind of like the projects that I want to tackle, not particularly from, or not from, for this year, but kind of in the upcoming months. I think as I'm finishing up editing this video, I'm gonna order the fabric for Selwyn because at the very least, I want to have the fabric for his hair because the skin tone I think is about the same for Kaisen and Masaki, so I won't really screw around with that. And then I think I have to dig around from my old fabric and see if the kind of like cardigan color that I gave Masaki for a different version, if I still have that fabric, because I think it's the perfect color for Selwyn's cardigan. And then I'm gonna have to buy a few more bits of fabric for the rest of his outfit and hopefully find a way to adhere like these little glasses that I have for kind of like smaller dolls, but I feel like they're a little bit too big for the 10cm dolls, so I'll try to find a way to make sure it works out. If not, I'll make Selwyn's hair just like a bit more puffier to see if we can kind of fit it on his head. So lots to do, and I'm excited. I think one thing that was kind of an issue throughout the rest of this year, for the most part, especially I guess maybe between events that were happening, especially from like spring to summer, I have been feeling a little bit, it's not even burnt out, but like very unsure about a lot of things, or feeling a little demoralized about like certain projects or illustrations that I've been making. So right now, because I do have the energy and I feel very excited to work on things, I'm gonna try my best to take advantage of that. And because November and December is a little bit more or less on the less busy side in terms of like events, I'm hoping at least I will have a lot more time just to tackle a good chunk of these projects if I can. If I don't finish them, then that's like perfectly fine, but just allowing myself to keep that motivation up and like channeling that throughout the rest of the other projects that I want to do will hopefully make things a little bit more quicker for myself in terms of trying to finish these at some point. I don't know if I'm just rambling at this point, so apologies if nothing I said for the last, I don't know, 15-ish minutes probably is even coherent. So let's go back and talk a little bit more about the drawings once again. So I think at this point I've already finished up rendering to some degree, and probably I don't know, maybe 80% or maybe 75% finished rendering the first one to the point where, you know, more things are a little bit cleaner, they're sharper, a little bit more contrast here and there, but there are still some areas where I did not put in the effort to really polish it up. So after that, I moved on to the second one, which is the one we're working on right now. And once I started doing the kind of rendering process, I ended up erasing his wings. And I kind of wanted to go with more of like the crying, embarrassed kind of expression. And I've always seen people draw both Robin and Sunday kind of with the wings covering their face. So Sunday, more or less, it's like when he's sad or embarrassed, he kind of covers his face either with like his hood is up or like the scarf as a hood over his head, as well as like the wings doing the little thing where it's like covering more of their face under their eyes, and I think it looks super cute. So I decided to do that for this one instead of having the wings just out and him kind of having like a crying-ish expression. But I think compared to the first one, this one's also like left a little bit more unfinished. I was more focused on definitely making the lines just darker to at least give an appearance that it kind of looks a little bit cleaner than it actually is. Also, I kind of noticed a little bit late, like while I'm actually editing this video, that the color of Sunday's hair might be a little bit too off. Part of it is because I did end up adding an addition layer to kind of add highlight and a brighter light source to all of the drawings, but his hair is more of like a, almost like a gray blue-ish color. It's a little bit more towards gray, if anything, but I've definitely drawn it a little bit lighter here and more towards white for a lot of the lighter areas in his hair, which is technically not accurate per se. I don't know why I made that choice, or if I accidentally just forgot what the color of his hair was after I laid down like the initial flats for it, because sometimes if I don't refer back to my reference as closely, I kind of just like fill in the gaps, or I think I know what I'm doing and what it looks like. So apparently, yeah, I think I ended up making Sunday's hair a lot lighter in a lot of aspects, and then I kind of forgot a little bit of like white near the tips of his hair where it kind of, I don't know how to explain it. Some parts of it has more of like a choppier white section to the bottom portion of his hair where it kind of meets his shoulder-ish area. I don't know. Sometimes the characters that I find that I don't do much justice, I also just can't interpret their hair very well. I struggled with drawing Danheng for a long time as well. When I was doing any drawing of him, I feel like none of them like actually look like him, or his hair just felt a little bit too off. It was either too fluffy and it stuck out too much, it was too long, or it was too short and it was a little bit too round, so it just didn't really resemble him. For his Sunday, sometimes I made his hair a little bit too long, but he kind of has like what you consider like a mullet, like the shorter hair in the front, longer hair in the back, but it kind of blends nicely, at least if you see it like kind of in the side view. So I'm not too sure what you would consider it. Maybe he just has long hair and he just has more like side pieces and the fringe is just on the longer side. Maybe that's why. I might doodle him a little bit more in my sketchbook once I actually finish editing this video to see if I can get a better grasp of him, even though I don't really have like any intentions of doing a full illustration of him for a video. I don't think. Maybe in my free time, who knows, we'll see. But kind of one of the last finishing details that I like to do for sketch pages, especially because like if you have patterning or a grid background, I do like to make the characters kind of like stand out a little bit more from the background. And even though you can definitely put white behind the doodles or sketches, I like to make a new layer on top of everything and just do a white outline with the sketch round brush that I was using to sketch out the characters, make a outline around everything, as well as like using it to clean up some stray lines here and there if I think some of the outlines just look a little bit scraggly. After that, we'll tie everything together with a little bit of doodling of like little sparkles, shocked expressions. We can do like sweat or whatever you want to do, and then I will also add his name. We'll go ahead, duplicate the name, and then Gaussian blur it so that we can use the auto select tool alongside with the color fill to kind of make an outline. I know Procreate has a very weird way of doing this because there's not really an outline tool per se, but this kind of works. Or like it doesn't have like expand selection. I think it might be the issue. So I end up doing it kind of the roundabout way. We alpha locked the colors of our little doodles alongside with our sketch, and then I can just recolor them as is. And I think that is pretty much it for the doodles. Oh, there's actually one more thing that I forgot to do, and I think I do show it in the video. So basically, I ended up doing Sunday's pattern on a separate layer. So this is on a multiply layer on top of everything. And I picked kind of like a grayish color so that we can do the patterning on his scarf hood. And I ended up not doing this initially when I was doing the rough colors because it makes it easier for me to get the shape and paint in the shadows for the fabric without having to dodge the pattern. And I find that using multiply just works out very well for this. But I think that's it for the drawing session for today, or like the sketch page session. I do think for the most part, I like these drawings a little bit better than the initial one that I did of Sunday from, I think it's December of last year. So it's been a year pretty much. I don't know. I don't think I did him justice quite yet. I might redo another set in the future, or maybe I'll just draw in my free time, like I said, because I don't want to subject you guys to even more just random Sunday drawing over and over and over again. But hopefully you guys don't mind that today's video was not the planned ASMR session that I was initially going to do. I'll definitely do another one in the near future. I don't know if it'll be a sketch page per se, or an illustration, or start to finish, but hopefully you guys enjoyed watching me do a redemption-ish kind of drawing of Sunday, and I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!